Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to Foul Ball Safety Now, another edition, summer of 2025. Looking forward to bringing on a guest for the today. But before we do that, I wanted to discuss a little news about foul ball safety on what's happening. I mentioned on an early recording that we're dealing with a Queens College investigation. This is a whistleblower student athlete who contacted me a while back and was worried that one of his teammates or himself would be directly responsible for hurting or doing worse to an elementary school student who would be walking around outside the baseball field. So that's what they talked about amongst themselves. So I wrote a letter to the Queens College president and got a response back from the athletic director. And within a few months, I wrote another letter. And apparently, my lawyer says eventually they'll have a dialogue with us. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see how that all plays out. And then there was unfortunately a woman hit outside a ballpark in Modesto, California. And we learned at the end of July that she received a settlement. Lawyers for the law firm that was representing the woman contacted us a few months earlier preparing for trial, but it never had gone to trial. There was a settlement. Fortunately, we don't know the details or exactly how much money she may have received. Many times the people that do get settlements are muzzled and they can only say so much. Fortunately, some people do discuss not necessarily the details of their settlement, but a little bit about advocating for fan safety. The gentleman whose wife was killed at the Dodger game in 2018, he's been very kind and gracious with foul ball safety now, giving us a lot of time attending press conferences, not necessarily talking about his own settlement with his situation with his own wife, but he was able to attend press conferences and speak his mind about advocating for netting. So, well, those two stories have to do with balls flying outside ballparks. We'll certainly get into things about balls flying inside of ballparks as well. That being said, those coming to the first time, please go to Foul Ball Safety Now and look at all we've done the last 6 years. We're trying to put everything down for everyone to see. You'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. Before I bring on our first guest, I want to introduce Brianna, my co-host, Brianna Ludwig. Say hi, Brianna.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Brianna. Brianna will have a lot to say, a little to say, nothing to say. No, she'll always have something to say. So I'm excited to hear what you'll say during the conversation. So without further ado, we're going to bring on Levi Pixton. Levi is from the Seattle area, and he's a broadcaster. And Levi came on to Foul Ball Safety Now a short time ago. And as we all know, we turn the tables here at Foul Ball Safety Now, and we let people who find out about us for the first time a few days earlier give us a sense of exploratory questions and other things, pushback. So, Levi, take it away. Levi, how are you today?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate you being here. And you're a sports broadcaster, so we'll have some, I'm sure, insights from your point of view. Looking forward to hearing that. And yeah, please fire away. Let's get it going.
Gotcha. Again, thank you. I'm so happy to be here on the Foul Ball Safety Now podcast. Now, initially, I have a lot of questions that maybe you guys have covered in the past. Some simple stuff right from the get go. And one that may be the most kind of interesting to me is you're a realtor from Brooklyn in New York. And
Yep.
I want to know what initially started this campaign for you for better netting in baseball and kind of enforcement for, responsibility on the ballparks in regards to that. And what sparked your interest and engagement regarding this particular issue?
Thanks for asking. I was a real estate broker in New York for about 10 years. I did my own thing, which was interesting. My license may have expired up until now, but I'm not in New York anymore. But yes, definitely did business in real estate in New York. But in 2019, I was watching some morning news and I saw a little girl in Houston get hurt by a foul ball, which was very troubling to see that. And it made me think of other experiences I had with my own fandom, going to games and being exposed to line drives and, two situations that come to mind. One was actually 20 years or so earlier when I was in Brooklyn, New York with friends. We were outside the ballpark in Brooklyn near Coney Island where the Cyclones play, and a ball came outside the ballpark and hit a young person we were with right in the forearm. on a fly. So that was a little troubling. And then in a playoff game in 2006, it was a memorable game. It was Mets versus the Cardinals in a 7-game series, and it was game 6. And I was sitting a few seats away from Jerry Seinfeld, where there were no nets at the time above the dugout. And I wasn't used to sitting in those kinds of seats. It was the only seat I could find, and I spent a lot of money to get that one seat. It was the only seat I could find. I was looking for a nosebleed, but, you take what you can get, and that would be one of those days where I was sitting in an area where I had not been used to sitting so close, and I was definitely a little bit nervous. It was quite a memorable day. The Mets had won, and then they lost the next day, unfortunately, in the deciding game. But that was 2006. And just after I seen that news report in 2019 about the little girl, I had the means to make some statements and throw some cash into the issue. And I offered the Yankees and the Mets an opportunity to upgrade netting immediately. And they didn't take me seriously. And that's fine. I may have not expected them to, but I figured I would try. And I've been at it for 6 years and just working away with a journalist by the name of Brendan. And we've been doing research and interviewing victims and baseball players, sometimes broadcasters, people that have gone on the record. They're getting ready to be quoted for a book or books that we may put out. So quite a journey. I really appreciate you asking. I'm not sure if I covered it all.
No, you did. Absolutely. So it sounds like you were always cognizant and aware that there were risks involved at games. And it was, somewhere in the back of your mind majority of the time. But in 2019, which I do believe from my own research was at Minute Maid Park.
Yes.
Yeah, and that girl was 2 years old. I think it was a line drive into the stands, and it was a skull fracture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even long-time brain injury. I do remember that.
I'm not sure how she's doing today. Hopefully, she won't have neurological effects, going forward, not really following her post-treatment. But I think that case was settled a couple years
Yes.
ago.
Yes, it was. I do remember that. Yeah.
But we don't
No.
know the details, and it's not. And again, it's a missed opportunity for us to wrap our head around the situation which happened to the girl, because maybe there's only limited things that we're going to learn from it
Yep,
because of
exactly.
the non-disclosure. Yeah.
Now, kind of a follow-up to that question.
Sure.
Anybody who visits your website, which is extremely informative, by the way, I do believe it's foulballsafetynow.com, they can read kind of what I would call a mission statement, which is extremely informative, has a lot of what you're looking to alleviate, a lot of the different issues, and you've cataloged extremely well a lot of the different stories in the news, whether they be video or article sections. I mean, it's just extremely well cataloged. But I want to hear from you personally. What do you want the MLB to implement as far as alleviating and ameliorating some of these issues and risks that are very prevalent at ballparks?
So I feel for years, since 1970, that there was an opportunity, a learning moment, an opportunity to get information to the season ticket holders, to the regular people who go to games all the time, bring kids. What can be done? After a 14-year-old boy died in 1970, there's been 55 winters since then where they could have educated the fan base exactly about what they were dealing with when they had come to a game. Most of the times, we only learn about these happenings through passing on the news or a high-profile incident in 2019. But it's inevitable that there's going to be many injuries throughout the year in ballparks all across America. Why hasn't there ever been a true mechanism in place that would be obviously educating us? Most people, when they go to the games, they think foul ball and fun. They don't really think of foul ball flirting with danger or worse. And if they really did have a sense of what we knew, they would think again before going to those games. Clearly, Exhibit A from 2019 demonstrates you're out of your mind to sit in any of these sections past the end of the dugout if you have kids, or even if you're an adult, or even a baseball player on your night off. You're not there to be staring down line drives, even if you're the most skilled person with the greatest reflexes of all time. You're not supposed to be there for 3 hours. But unfortunately, in 2025, there's at least approximately 40 cities today of the professional cities that I know of that are still not operating with nets past the end of the dugouts. And I think it's just terrible that this information isn't being exchanged. That video from 2019 had a lot of engagement when it aired, but it died down really fast. It went from 700,000 views to zero because the network didn't show the video over and over again. They only showed it a few times, maybe, because it went from all that engagement to zero. And I think if that stayed in the news, we would have had dialogue, we would have had constructive conversation. Guys like me would have had an opportunity to put all my information on the table. So then it would alleviate the unknown factors. So I could then say, this is the issues, guys. I'm putting it on the table so we can stare at it. And then maybe the people above our pay grades, the independent netting councils of the world that are going to come into each ballpark and determine what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what still remains a question mark. These things have not been addressed. We go to games, we see signs, we hear warnings. We're there already. Why are we there to begin with? That's sort of where that's at. I've been at this for a while.
So you touched on a couple of topics, and
Sure.
I'm going to jump ahead to a couple of questions that I
Sure.
had for you anyways, but
Yeah.
you already touched on them. So when you're
Okay.
talking about ballparks assuming the responsibility, because you touched on something that I did research into in regards
Mhm.
to their terms and conditions for ticket
Mhm.
buyers, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I've got one. I'm going to read a quick one here from the
Sure.
Washington Nationals, right?
Okay.
And it's their assumption of risk section for all ticket buyers, and it's a warning that says
Says
the holder
the
assume all risk, danger, and injury incidental to the game of baseball or related activities incidental to the event, whether occurring before, during, or after the actual playing of the in-game. And then I'll read one even from the Seattle Mariners here. It
Sure.
says it's in their release of liability and covenant not to sue, which is really important to understand. It's holder on behalf of holder, any accompanying party, and their related persons waives, releases, discharges, holds harmless, and covenants not to sue the released parties with respect to any claim. And then it jumps ahead to the inherent risks associated with visiting the ballpark, including without limitation all claims for personal injuries or wrongful death. Now,
Mhm.
that's quite the assumption of risk on behalf of the party attending the game and buying the
Yep.
ticket, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
one big thing that you touched on was that, yeah, sometimes these games, even with the pitch count implemented now, which they say
Mhm.
shortens games, right? But sometimes you go 3 hours, longer than 3 hours. It's very easy to just say, pay attention, right? And even if you're paying attention, 110-mile-an-hour line drive coming at you is pretty hard to see and prepare yourself to maneuver and get out of the way of. Like
Yeah,
that
we're not
seems almost
superheroes. We're not superheroes. Right. Right.
exactly. And to that point, I mean, oftentimes there's videos on YouTube from the catcher's point of view, and they'll show you a pitch coming from a pitcher at like 100 miles an hour. And that's just astronomical for us to wrap our minds around. So
Yeah.
that is a very interesting point that you bring up. Now, another one was how it's difficult for when you talked about the 2019 event and
Yeah.
how that did come to the forefront of the news, and you did see the video here and there, but it kind of
Yeah.
gets lost in the sauce, right? It's the unfortunate nature of the news cycle and how, the turnover rate is so high. Do you kind of take that in your responsibility or your point of view of where your position is in trying to keep this topic prevalent and aware and consistent in the public eye so people are aware of this?
Yeah, I definitely remain, I guess, vigilant. I hope I remain in healthy aggression mode, but we're still in the dark ages, 2025, and I have to remind us all that we really are until, there's an acknowledgement that baseball should have been making these gestures, not just in fancy legalese that nobody ever sees. Now you don't even see them on tickets anymore because nobody has tickets. You have to go searching for those forms on your phone. But even when they were on tickets, they were in microprint. They don't
Yep.
educate us properly. They don't usually enlarge waivers, those disclosures on the scoreboard. If they did, then all of a sudden people would be like, oh, is that what we've been reading all these years? now we finally get it. Maybe we shouldn't be sitting here today. Or maybe we need to, look at Exhibit A1 on the website, which revisits the 538 report from 2019 that Brendan and we thought we did a good job and laying it out mathematically, just how many balls go into hot zones or how many foul balls there are per year. Because, you're constantly hearing announcers, when they describe the ball off the bat as bullets, lasers, and certainly new stats I'm seeing every single game. The top 3 balls hit today, not necessarily home runs. 110-mile-an-hour ground ball by Pete Alonso, 105-mile-an-hour ground ball by, I don't know, Juan Soto. Those guys, that's the team that I've been rooting for, the New York Mets. So, you're being reminded about all of this, and you're seeing this right before your eyes, but most people just don't really understand the true impact. They all believe, most fans come to the game thinking foul ball and fun and cotton candy and little to no risk. Other people that maybe like me or you or Brianna that have a little bit more insight about what to expect. So my job is to continue to educate. And if baseball has mud on their face, which I think they do, we need to bring this to light and say, you should have done better in the winter months in educating us about really what happens spring and summer. And you really haven't. You can't really demonstrate you had. I guess I'm going for that for historical reasons. And certainly the victims that Brendan and I have interviewed, they deserve some sort of closure and some sort of acknowledgement that what happened to them. A couple of people we've interviewed were blinded. Another gentleman who lost his wife, Linda Goldblum, who died at the Dodger game. He's also been interviewed by us, very kind with his time. I do hope one day we can talk about, you remember the old dark ages back in 2025, and now baseball's being, in 2035, we're now in a place where there's integrity in the game and everything is known and everything has finally been discussed. All the unknowns were finally put on the table and we dealt with it past, present, and future. And here we are. So, of course, I hope baseball becomes something of a present day game with integrity. Right now, unfortunately, I got a lot of things to say.
The level of transparency that there is currently with Major League Baseball and their fans is just unacceptable. With the assumption of risk, if you sign off your assumption of risk to go skydiving, it's pretty obvious that you could be seriously injured or even die. But nobody is thinking walking into a ballpark that there is a possibility that they could walk out and their life could never be the same, or worse, that they could die from being struck by a foul ball. So just the level of transparency needs to be better. And they've marketed foul balls as fun for all of these years, as a souvenir ball, bring your glove. It's such a fun time. Bring the kids, which they definitely market the ballpark as a fun family outing. And if you're going to market yourself that way, then you need to protect the people that you're inviting in to come spend their money.
For sure. Absolutely. Now, a little bit of pushback because I'm not just going to congratulate you at every corner. At Seattle, in our ballpark, I almost said Safeco. It's T-Mobile now. T-Mobile Park. They do have an announcement before the game. Now, it does make aware to the fans in the stands that they do take on the onus of responsibility and risk involved in the game that naturally comes with it. And so, at least at our ballpark, they have tried to a certain degree to try and make that as well known as they possibly can. Now, obviously, there could be other paths taken, like possibly videos or like a recognition of those who have, lost their lives and been hurt permanently by it. Like, to what degree do we make the level of impact without also impacting the kind of happy-go-lucky nature of the game? Is kind of a little bit of not an easy dance to take on.
Yeah, I think once there's a dialogue that finally comes to place, you, Brianna, and I, we could take a seat to the side because now like-minded people will finally be taking the torch and saying, okay, you may be pushing back and we may be too assertive, but now all these like-minded people are going to come and be exposed to everything that we've learned and clearly demonstrate that even the protocols of telling you that a bullet may be coming at your head, but sit here for the next 3 hours. Would you drive down a road where it said landmines, be careful? You would not drive down that road. Would you ever see a child under a construction site without a helmet or let alone on the site? Probably not. There could be a seat warning, a warning right in front of you. Jordan, there are signs all over the ballpark and even in front of the seat that you're sitting in, or on the back of the seat where you're sitting, you can see, be careful of a ball. But we're really not superheroes, and we're not there to deflect these balls. People say we're trying to catch a ball. I don't know if they're trying to catch it. They may just be trying to block their face in some
No,
cases. All right. It's like, oh, I don't want to get killed. And they won't know it till they live it. If there's 80 million baseball fans, that's 79 and more million people who will never be affected, let's say. But the other thousands of people will be, and their lives will be changed. And that's really where it's at. And I don't know why baseball doesn't finally want to deal with what has been all these years and finally acknowledge all the people that have been hurt and deal with what still remains to be a factor. They do know exit velocities. They can't dance around the last decade or two because everything is so StatCast driven. They know every exit velocity of every ball that went into every section. And even when nets are up, there are gaps. They go over the nets and they may hit you at 93 as opposed to 108. We are aware of situations. Just this year, we just put out something at Foul Ball Safety Now with injuries we discovered in the MLB over the last 6 months since the baseball season started. And these are the only things that we found. And some people don't have serious injuries, but other people did. A baseball player had his hand leaning on the rail, and he got surgery. Hunter Wendelstadt, the first base umpire, he's been out of work for the last 3 months. He was 90 feet away and then another 10 feet behind, and he got struck directly in the head, and he was looking. What about in those approximately 40 ballparks that are also 100 feet away from the ball, a little past the dugout? That's also about 100 feet away. How are they going to get out of the way? No way. Hunter Wendelstadt's staring at the game. He's staring at the pitch. He's staring at the bat without blinking, kind of thing, and it hits him right square in the head. It's unacceptable. MLB is directly affiliated with these other professional clubs. They pay the salaries of these professional clubs. Not all of them. Some of them are just called MLB Partner League teams. But the fact that since 2019, when Commissioner Manfred said something about, that was 2022, the video came out in 2019, so clearly it demonstrated what the heck are you bringing your kid sitting in that section for? So that 3 years later, it took the commissioner to finally say something. By 2025, all teams need to extend their nets down to foul pole as possible in the minor league, in the professional development league. They used to be called minor leagues. Now it's professional development league. They gave them 2.5 years after this announcement was made in December 2022. Why did they say do it over the winter and get it done by March 2023? They gave them 2.5 years. At the time, I think there were around 40 of those teams in the PDL that did not have extended netting down to the foul pole. And most of them waited till 2025. Some still haven't gotten it done. And then there's other MLB partner league teams still with no netting past end of dugouts.
Understood. Well, on this topic, there's a couple of things you did bring up that are important to address. So, yes, there's a lot that can be done to try to make the everyday ballpark goer as aware as possible of the inherent risks that are there at a game. Now, my question and the ultimate question a lot of people are going to come up with is, to what degree do we give the responsibility to ballparks, almost like a helicopter parent, to protect us from every single possible risk that's there at the ballpark without damaging the inherent enjoyability of a baseball game? So there's a difference between a 110 mile an hour line drive and a fly ball. We both know that, and a lot of baseball fans that are listening are going to know that too. So there was a 3-week-old who was injured in a minor league ballpark. It was in Hickory, North Carolina. And that was from a fly ball, which could be a foul ball as well. We know that. But that's a very different aspect of the game as far as how you can protect against it, which to me, you almost can't. So I guess my ultimate question to you is, can there be an extent of trying to protect fans as much as possible that does impede upon the other attendees at the game's ability to enjoy the game?
To the extreme, I would say if a judge saw the video exhibit A in one of their towns where approximately 40 teams playing no netting pass down the dugout. If one of those judges saw that video today, I think an appropriate response would be, if they're 18 and older and they want to take a line drive to the neck, so be it, but they're not going to bring the little guys. How dare the adults drag the little guys? Similar to like running with the bulls. The three of us are not running to
Yep.
Spain, maybe to run with bulls. But if the adults are 18 and older and they really want to run, they could run. Run, keep running. But the kids are not going to be running with you because it's so evident. Now, about the romance and about whatever the inherent risks are, it's finally time for the education. Again, we're not going to get the solutions out. We're going to certainly provoke solutions. That's what we do at Foul Ball Safety Now. But it's just the three of us talking. Again, we want 12 people and then 36 people talking about it. And then we pass on the torch because we ignited the conversation. And then we move on to the next cause. But until then, of course, I'm going to have to remain vigilant about what needs to be done. And clearly, business as usual in 2025 is incorrect. And we can take it, again, the pop up, we could take it to the line drive. We could take it to the home run ball. We could take it to outside the ballpark, but all worthy of a discussion. And there are solutions. Why don't we want to find out those solutions? Is it going to jeopardize the wholesome, pristine image of how baseball's been doing business for the last 100 and plus years? Yeah, that's what it is. Everyone's
Yeah, so
scared to
But,
touch the legacy of the game.
yeah, I'll put it like this. As a mother, knowing what I know, having worked on this campaign, becoming intimate with victims and their stories, as a mother, I will never take my kids to a baseball game unless you can guarantee me that there's no possibility. That's where I'm at with what I know. And a lot of people aren't as informed as me. And then situations happen, which is so heartbreaking. I can't even imagine how the parents feel.
absolutely. It's actually kind of reminiscent of CTE in football. So the NFL tried its absolute best to hide CTE as best as it possibly could, like a legitimate concerted effort to hide the effects of CTE and the fact that they even knew that these injuries were happening in football. And then once the discussion was started, like you're talking about, everybody was more fully aware of all of the risks that are inherent in football. And it was like almost inescapable at that point. And the movie Concussion with Will Smith played a big part in that, right? And after that, you started to see all of these new implementations and rules and all these different protective factors and evolution and gear and football safety equipment start to take place, which continues today. So what I'm hearing from you is just set a fire to this discussion to the point where it's just like that, inescapable. And then from that point on, we can truly start to find some reasonable, realistic solutions and different, advancements in the game that can protect people and better inform them to where these problems, like Brianna said, are not even going to be a question. Because it is kind of inconceivable that a parent goes to a game with an infant and then they assume all responsibility if an infant possibly suffers, long-term brain damage or even death. That is just kind of ridiculous in a sense.
It shouldn't be a possibility,
Yeah.
period. I would love for them to find a solution because I would love to go to a baseball game with my kids, but it will never happen unless it's a guarantee. I would never put my children in a situation like that.
Now, Brianna, does that include even higher level seats? Because I'm just thinking from a listener's point of view or a viewer's point of view of like, is that going to be everywhere in the ballpark? Or are there other areas in a ballpark that you would find are at least the risk is minimalized to a point where it's almost kind of, negligent?
So with what I've seen, I wouldn't say any area of the ballpark is safe until there is an independent party with no fiscal interest that comes in and actually conducts a study, which has never been done in every single ballpark, because every ballpark, as you know, Levi, is built differently.
Mm-hmm.
It would have to be done in every single ballpark to really know how high, far, and wide the netting needs to be to prevent injuries. And there would have to be transparency around that for me to even consider it.
Gotcha. So at least some concerted effort by the league to prove to you that they've taken the onus of responsibility on themselves to provide you with the information necessary to know it's safe.
Absolutely. And I think it's unacceptable. Any other answer than that is unacceptable to me as a parent. Me going by myself as an adult, that's a completely different story. But any answer that they have. The fans didn't want it, blah, 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 or it's too difficult, or we don't have the means. We have to wait till next season. There is no child's life on this earth that is worth the wait, in my opinion. There's no one's life, child or not, that's worth the wait. So for me, it's unacceptable.
I would agree. Absolutely. That's very well said. Now, this is kind of an interesting question that I thought about while doing all of my prep work for this. Do you think that there's a possible opportunity that's available with the upcoming CBA negotiations between the MLB and the Players Association, like a window or a pathway to kind of engage the league and provide better reinforcement and awareness regarding this issue?
So, Levi, I've been working with Brendan for now 6 years, and we may have discovered 4 separate occasions during collective bargaining that the netting issue came up. And we never saw any minutes of those negotiations. But if this took place every 4 years over the last, let's say, 16 years, and all we heard from the union was, well, we tried, we asked them, and maybe they didn't comply. How about the union, similar to like a bricklayers union? Would they allow their workers to go to work with tainted cement? So it would be on the minds of the bricklayers that they were using a tainted product. Potentially these bricks would come raining down every 6 months, so they'd be loose. I don't think so. I don't think the rank and file would allow that. So why the heck has the players union ever even negotiate? What's to negotiate? How about the rank and file union saying to the owners, we don't go to work and hit balls at babies' heads. Do something about it. We'll talk to you later. But did they? I don't think so. I'd love to see the minutes of those negotiations. So Levi, I think it's a non-starter, to be quite honest with you. And the legacy will be determined once this is a known who's the villain here. People may want to say it's MLB, but are we all sort of part of this? People that work within the game, certainly the baseball players, the predecessors who came before, the guys who run the league, union guys who were former players themselves, who know what these younger guys are going through, and they haven't taken the burden off of their shoulders. So unfortunately, young adult athletes in the college level, we're dealing with a whistleblower athlete who knows that one of them will eventually crush or kill an elementary school kid outside the ballpark because they're hitting the balls in practice at hard speeds over the sides. And it's going to hit somebody like it hit that woman in Modesto, California. We were contacted by that law firm a few months back, and she just got a settlement. These baseball players are forced to compromise their own integrity. They all want to be Major League Baseball players. So they've gone through 3 to 5 years of professional baseball before they even made it to the major leagues. Most of those guys usually don't make it up in 6 months. They usually go for a few years. And whatever the ratio is, they're exposed to it, and it's bad enough. So it's time to take it off these young souls who are probably damaged. We have something at Foul Ball Safety now called the Healing Project, because Brendan and I have already interviewed more than 30 baseball players on the record. Most of these guys, we found them working at baseball academies or instructors post minor league professional career. So they're all making a living in the baseball industry, and they have a lot to talk about. We've recorded more than 30 guys. They're indirectly feeling sorry that they were part of this. Now we made it more formal. We have an opportunity for them to step up and say, my name is Joe Smith or Billy Jones or whatever their name may be. I played baseball from 2006, 2019, and I was in these situations where I told my own parents to sit, but we also knew amongst ourselves, just like the Queens College player, that one of us would ultimately hurt someone. And this is inside the ballpark. These Queens College guys are worried about hitting people outside the ballpark, maybe also inside the ballpark. There's just so much to be learned, and it's time to put all this information on the table. And that's what these conversations can do. It's exciting that you wanted to be part of this with us.
Again, another great point. You do see how when these injuries happen, how it affects the players. I mean, a lot of them just break down and cry, and they can't believe like that it happened. It's strange that there hasn't been a bigger effort to try and alleviate this and make awareness, more inescapable. It's very strange, because if the possibility of injury, like what happens in football, was put upon fans, I mean, you wouldn't hear the end of it. So why is it the case in the MLB? It's strange.
Well, we just haven't heard the end of it yet. That's what we're attempting to do. But the devastation has been the legacy of baseball. It's just that most people haven't gotten the memo yet. But we're going to do what we can to stay vigilant and healthy aggression, as I put it, and we're going to stay the course.
Now that we've all been further educated on this clearly very important issue that exists within baseball and the MLB and the minor leagues and the major leagues, how can we as fans help along this process of better enforcement and safety from foul balls?
Well, it's just about becoming informed, staying informed, understanding that there's victims and people that have been not made whole because they've been hurt, whether they've lost eyes or lost loved ones to life. It's just really about getting caught up to speed. This is part of the history of baseball. It deserves its own place, its own exhibit, and we've collected so much information. We do hope we were able to display all of this. Maybe would open up as an exhibit and learning center about the status quo, and as I call it, the dark ages, and hopefully would transition into more of a remembrance place of let's remember what happened and continually bring new people in to share their own stories, like the 30 baseball players that talked with Brendan and I. Hopefully, they'll want to go a little bit deeper into those experiences. It's about alleviating all serious injuries from baseball. It's about alleviating the psychological burden that these young players are feeling as adults, keeping silent because they're chasing a dream. And maybe that's not for the right reasons, but there's not enough encouragement from the older generation to get these guys to speak up and share their anxieties. Now we have one person in Queens who may be starting a national discussion, because what's happening in Queens, when you go to Foul Ball Safety Now and you'll see the Queens College investigation, it's not so unique. It could be hundreds or maybe 1,000 ballparks where balls do fly outside, high school, college, professional, where they fly outside. And fortunately, they do hit people, as we learned in the Modesto, California situation, where it made direct contact. Unfortunately, it was the woman's head instead of the car window. A lot of times it's the car window, and that is like obvious. It's just a matter of education and staying informed, and more people that start making circles, conversations about this issue, the better. And, this is exciting to be part of taking guests that may know a little about the issue and a few days from now are ready to ask some questions and get to know the issue. So we really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I would answer a little bit of that question for you too. It's
Sure.
visit foulballsafetynow.com and become better informed, and then spread the word to your friends and family so we become more of a
Appreciate that.
collective as far as the informed.
Levi, as a baseball fan and somebody who loves this game, and that love has bled into your work, and it really takes an important space up in your life, how pertinent do you feel baseball's image, the nostalgia, the popcorn, the family fun is to your love of the game? And what do you feel like the relationship is between baseball's image and transparency and telling the truth and protecting people?
That's a fantastic question. And I think they are inevitably connected for sure, as far as the league's willingness to become transparent as far as the risks involved and its hope to kind of protect that kind of all-American image of baseball. I think they do know it would inevitably cause some harm to the happy-go-lucky kind of, and Jordan kind of spoke to it earlier, no risk involved nature of attending a baseball game. I think it would inevitably affect that. And I do think that those two things are connected. And it has affected my view of the game as well, as far as this kind of nonchalant, freewheeling kind of attendee at a game. There is a major risk involved that makes you more aware of the dangers involved. And it's just like any other sport. I think it finally puts baseball in that category of any other sport, that there's dangers involved and it's spread to fans and attendees as well. And because of that, it's not as simple and as cotton candy eating and hot dog buying event that we like to think it to be. Yeah, I would absolutely agree. It's going to affect every individual's view of the game that becomes educated. And I think that's what baseball's trying to protect. I think it's trying to avoid that inevitable information in order to protect its image as far as baseball is concerned.
I can't help but see everything from a mother's point of view, but it's just like, why not make it real? Implement all of these safety measures, make it preventable, and then it can really be a fun family laissez-faire outing. There's
Yeah.
hope in that. I think it would take years for baseball to restore its image publicly if they were to come forward and really make people aware of the true risk of going to the game. It would take years, but after implementing all of the safety measures necessary to prevent people from being injured, that could be real. That could be the reality. The facade could be real. It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, that's extremely well said. It's still a possible dream, but you can make that dream a reality if you just take the
Yeah.
responsibility.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining. This was a really compelling discussion. I want to thank again Brianna Ludwig, my co host, and Levi Pixton. Levi, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a great discussion, and I'm very happy to be here.